In an effort to build consumer trust and promote a deeper connection to food, the Center for Food Integrity is partnering with the Food Marketing Institute to create a new culture of transparency. Joining us now by phone for a further look is the Center for Food Integrity CEO, Charlie Arnott. Thanks so much for joining us, Charlie. And tell us about your partnership with the Food Marketing Institute and the Transparency Roadmap.
Well, we've been partnering with the Food Marketing Institute over the last year to really dig into transparency in a much more meaningful way. And through our research and research done by FMI, we've discovered that transparency is one of the absolutely essential elements to building consumer trust. The roadmap is really designed to be just that, a roadmap for organizations, food companies, restaurants, retailers, farmers to better understand why is transparency important, and more importantly, how can they become more transparent in a way that will actually result in increased consumer trust.
Okay, let's talk about what's most important to consumers today when it comes to transparency.
We identified 6 topics that we know are important to consumers: the relationship between diet and health, food safety, the impact on the environment, labor and human rights, treatment of animals, and general business ethics. And through our research, we identified that some of those issues are more important to some consumer groups than others, but essentially there's an expectation that agriculture and food will be transparent in all 6 of those areas if we actually want to enhance consumer trust.
You know, this is really a growing trend among millennials. Talk about the specific guidance that you do provide in the roadmap, because this is probably something that's going to continue more and more in the future.
It absolutely is, and I think transparency is going to take many different forms. If you are a food retailer, it's going to be about understanding where the food comes from, your supply chain, your sources, and then how you share that information with your consumers, which is obviously going to have an impact on farmers, because the grocery stores are going to go back to their suppliers, who are going to go back to their suppliers, and ultimately it comes back to the farm. So one of the things to begin to do is to have that conversation about becoming transparent. What does it mean on our farm or our operation? What information are we willing to share? What information is proprietary, and how do we talk about that in a way that helps consumers understand we aren't hiding anything, we are willing to share who we are and what we do, but there are things that remain private for proprietary reasons. But beginning that conversation now, beginning to become more comfortable with transparency, sharing information will help us become more transparent over time, which will ultimately result in greater consumer trust.
Absolutely, and in turn, more people buying our products. Now, talk about your advice that you have for companies looking to enhance their transparency. Maybe people haven't gotten on board just yet.
Well, it begins with that internal conversation, because as we've talked to companies that have implemented a transparency policy, what they've told us is it can take a year or more just to generate internal alignment as they begin to have that conversation, because transparency is not well defined, and it can also feel very overwhelming. How much information do we need to share? With whom do we share it? And how do we share it? So you want to begin to have that conversation and start small. Identify a specific area where you can demonstrate you're being transparent, get comfortable with that, and then expand. Because what can oftentimes happen is if people take on too much too soon, it becomes overwhelming, it collapses, and they stop engaging in transparency behavior. So we think it's really important to identify specifically the objectives you want to achieve, a process you're going to follow, and then to start at a scale that is manageable for your organization or for your company.
Okay, foodintegrity.org for more information. Really appreciate you joining us. From the Center of Food Integrity, the CEO, Charlie Arnott. Thank you so much for joining us.